Supply chain is that one domain where they have not been able to plug very basic systemic issues.
I mean, absolutely.
Okay, so we shall start with a brief round of introductions.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I am Prashant Waghela. I am a part of engineering for Oferus. And I have my pie in across the platform and everything that we offer as a part of the Oferus cloud platform. This is Advait.
Yeah, I'm Advait.
Something more.
I've been here in this company for about 3 years. As of end of this month, I've spent a lot of time working in supply chain and manufacturing. I've spent a substantial amount of time setting up Grofers when they started off and looking at operations out here, which basically equates to understanding what clients are not happy with in their business and kind of giving them a good fitment of our product and seeing how we can resolve issues for them, which traditional organizations, traditional solutions have so far not been capable of doing. Interesting, I think over the last 3 years, just being able to get so much insight into what organizations running so-called traditional businesses over such a long time are still struggling with. It's been amazing learning for me.
Yeah, but these are systemic issues that have never been plugged in, right?
Yeah.
They have never been plugged in. For at least from whatever I can see and evaluate, supply chain is that one domain where they have not been able to plug very basic systemic issues.
I mean, absolutely, because you go to any organizations which is a mid-size or large size organization across industries. What we'll notice is that they're working with top of the line solutions and ERPs, probably looking at automations, but everyone kind of falters when it comes to working with partners. And at the end of the day, it's supply chain. And in today's context, I like to call it a supply web because it is not linear. It flows front, back, probably on either sides.
Horizontally,
vertically, it's like playing Minesweeper kind of. But the amazing part is, despite having these complicated solutions and these really large systems, there's some very basic parts of the supply chain which companies still struggle with. Having visibility across supply chain is such a huge issue today. Everyone is dependent on partners, and the moment you have dependency on someone else to tell you how your business is running, I think for me it is a big part of just not believing it, or
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It's the start.
It's a trust issue.
It's a start of doubt.
It's a trust issue.
It's a start of doubt.
Start of doubt.
Start of doubt. Absolutely. And what is it is absolutely right. Till the time the jurisdiction is in their control, they are awesome at it.
Yeah.
They have SAPs and bonds and and O and stuff karega.
Absolutely.
Once it gets out of the jurisdiction, uske baad, then what?
Yeah.
Where is my product going? How much inventory is lying there? What is going out?
Absolutely.
Which distributor is getting it? What retailer is getting it? All of that is a big nightmare.
And people struggle with it, and organizations struggle. The largest organizations struggle with it. I mean, without naming the organizations we work with, they're probably Fortune 500 organizations working in the ambit of our Indian supply chain. And they willfully tell you that as far as things are in our control, products are in our plants, in our warehouses, depots, we have 100% visibility. Well, I won't say 100%. Well, they have 100% visibility, but still, there is still some lack.
There is at least some scope to get there.
Yeah. Because it's your own employee. You give them the stick and you tell them, "ये काम कर नहीं किया तो फिर whatever." But
what about the ones after that?
उसके बाद माल जब वो बाहर जाता है उसके बाद you cannot give the stick to a guy who's helping you sell your products. He's like, मैं ये already कर रहा हूँ तुम्हारे लिए, जिसके लिए मैं पैसे ले रहा हूँ. उसके आगे ठीक है.
And I have a feeling the bigger the organization, the worse this problem gets. Because look at the number of distributors, like, for example, Unilever might have, or the retailers or preferred retailers, distributors Unilever might have.
Absolutely.
Just imagine the amount of doubt when data is basically going back and forth from manufacturing onto these third parties and back.
The larger the playing field, more the blind spots.
More the blind spots,
I mean, in fact, imagine you're working with the organizations as big as Unilever or someone, right? But the point is, at the end of the day, you're working with those many folks in your hierarchy. Information is traveling. Information gets distorted at every point that it travels because it's not systemic information at the end of the day, right?
Correct.
And even so, we talk about FMCG, right? Within India, in a brand which is a B2C brand, which is manufactured and sold to an end consumer, right? So if you split it out, saying that there's a B2B brand, which is, let's say if I'm selling heavy machinery to someone, large machinery, still organized supply chains, few points within your supply chain, for your partners,
few distributors,
not even distributors. B2C is directly एक factory में
Straight.
बना दूसरे
Correct.
factory में चला गया. You have absolute visibility.
Correct.
The moment you get into a B2C play, and when we talk about B2C in India, FMCG is the oldest, is the most evolved per se, right? Even in that, there is still a huge part of organized and non-organized. I mean, when I say organized, I'm talking about markets which are addressed or which are catered to by the distribution, catered to by folks who are taking orders, delivering the product. So, to give you an idea, in FMCG, for instance, right, today we say that almost 80 to 85% is general trade or traditional trade. After that, you have probably another 10 to 12%, which might be around modern trade. There's an aspect which is e-commerce right now. So this is something which has been touted for a long time in India since N90s, when modern trade took over, saying that how organized modern trade is, and which helps organizations get more visibility into the supply chain. But that still amounts to 10%, right? But the amazing part is that even within e-commerce, you still have good visibility because you're selling it to a last mile partner who's directly selling it to consumers, so you can get that data. But to imagine that for most organizations, this is the organized trade, which means there is someone who's taking that product till a retailer who sells it to the last guy. This is for most organizations, even for large organizations, right? This might constitute maybe even up to 50% of their organized trade, because in the ambit of our country, right, almost 40 to 50% of trade or sales or distribution that is done is through non-organized channels, which means that you don't even have a touch point with the guy who's selling it. This is the guy whose shop is so small that no distributor will go to him and give him the product which he needs to sell. So he's coming to a cash and carry, or he's coming to a wholesaler, right, in Sadar Bazaar, and he's buying his stuff and he's selling it. You have no touch point. You have no idea how, who that guy is.
No contact, no information, no
nothing.
background, nothing.
And it's impossible because the
how many of them? How many will you track?
How many will you track? And the cost of tracking it.
Yeah.
It's obviously, it is not. There's no unit economics in that.
Yeah.
Right? You can either track it or you can actually make money. So people usually say that ठीक है बिक रहा है सही है, जहाँ पे हमें data पता है we work with that, जहाँ पे नहीं पता हमें पता ही नहीं.
Yeah.
And this is this is such a huge part of having or the lack of visibility which is there in supply chain. It emanates from these unorganized distribution channels.
Yeah, and we haven't even gotten to the horizontal supply chain part of it, where there is a completely non-protocol based movement of goods.
Absolutely.
There is no protocol there.
Absolutely.
It is not mandated by manufacturing companies. It happens.
Absolutely. And it's by virtue of the kind of business they are in.
Yeah.
Since we are talking about FMCG. FMCG still has a more or less to a certain extent linear supply chain, because products move to a retailer.
Yeah.
The retailer either sells it or the product expires, and if it does, the retailer might be selling it, or manufacturer might be selling it on a SOR basis, sale or return.
Correct.
So he takes it back, or for example, Mondelez, they have a huge push or focus on ensuring that products which are expiry or near expiries are actually taken out from the market and destroyed.
And brought back.
That's something which is important to them as an organization. But again, this is still FMCG, right? When you move to agri, for instance, agri is by virtue of being a seasonal industry, it is unorganized. It thrives on being unorganized, or it thrives on that cross movement of product, literally. So, for instance, you look at companies who are selling seeds or anything that has anything to do with selling products which are in the agri inputs industry. Right? What happens out there is we have two seasons, Rabi and Kharif.
Correct, Rabi and Kharif, correct.
The products move downstream, it goes to a retailer, a farmer buys it, and there is a precise moment, right, after that first
There's a very small window of
there's a small window of
very
sale,
small window of sale,
right? There's a small window of sale. The guy has to buy his product. He has to sow his seeds, right? And I mean, if you look at India, the way the monsoon works is that it starts from like southwest and it moves, let's say,
correct,
northeast, and then it turns around and comes up again, right? And effectively, the placement of the products by organizations have to be done in the same way. Means their first priority is to get the products to the states which are in the southwest side, so that they are on the shelf.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So product placement happens like that.
In many ways, the supply chain are dictated by the rain gods.
But it is only dictated by the rain gods.
Correct.
While it is dictated by the rain gods, they also have to kind of mold themselves to adapt to the situation. So he's placed his product here. Let's say his sales is maybe 50%, 60%.
He has to be ready to move it.
He has to move it. So the product goes to the retailer, comes back to the distributor. From this distributor, it goes to the next distributor. From there, it is going back to the retailer. It's getting placed again, and probably it's following that cycle as the rain moves, right? And they have to be proactive about that. There's a huge amount of
They will want to cut corners there.
They will want to cut corners. They will want.
They have to.
Yeah. But the amount of returns specifically in the agri inputs is huge. Like it can sometimes even go up to 30%, 40% in certain organizations, which means that 40% of your product is essentially coming back to you, and that is not speaking about the product that you're replacing or a replacement of product during the season. So you sell, let's say, something in the southwest, it doesn't get sold, so you take it up, but you probably won't get it to the next state. You'll skip it and get it to the next state, so you have enough time to put it on the shelf.
Correct,
right?
correct.
Now, between all of that, the product is moving along with the monsoons, getting placed, replaced, and at the end of that, it's getting returned, and then you have to manage that because, well, specifically when you talk about seeds,
so they are perishable goods.
They are perishable goods,
yeah,
and they have yield, right? Like
and the yield will decrease.
The yield decreases, but they have to sell it the next year.
Yes,
and they have to say that this is the product with a lesser yield, which is getting sold next year. So the amount of visibility that you need as an agri company in the given small short span of time in which the sale is being made 2 times a year is amazing. And now you have to think about it. Even agri supply chains are not easy because usually they have dealers who sell to other retailers and dealers who sell directly to farmers, right? So it's a very complicated supply chain. This is actually a supply map. You're going up, down, left, right.
Everywhere. Yeah, absolutely. It's a proper web like we talked about.
Then you're reconciling, and after you have reconciled and gotten your stuff back, by the time it comes back, you are ready to start probably planning for the next season. So the next season needs to be planned on how much money you made, how much losses you have, how much you want to reuse, and even within that, within the manufacturing, because you have returned it, you debulk it, repack it, resend it. So it's an unending cycle,
which gets additionally more difficult because no two monsoons are the same. Timings are not the same. Sometimes it will come, sometimes it will not come. Sometimes there's a 15-day gap, 1 month gap, whatever it may.
Yeah.
So they have to be on their feet. So that agility is required in the supply chain.
And I mean, now you're looking at perspective of a manufacturer by virtue of you also have to look at it from a consumer's perspective. I think we were speaking about the other day as well.
Right.
Specifically in this in the agri business, there's a lot of focus on the yield of the product. A higher yielding product costs the farmer more, right? Which means to say that if you're investing some amount of money to sow your land, if you invest and buy a better seed and better products, you'll have a better yield. So it's like, more input cost and more yield and more money for him at the end of the day, which becomes really important because you imagine a guy, and this is also one industry where how do you see a seed is like, and we go back to this originality bit of it, right? Right. So in the market today, there are two kinds of, let's say, in the seeds market, there are two kinds which are there. There's a certified seed, right?
Yeah.
And there's a truthful seed. So truthful seed is which a company says that this is my seed, this is the yield, and I vouch for it, right? And then there's a certified seed for which the companies invest in getting certification from the government agencies, right? So companies have put in a lot of money, so they will sell it for more. Now, for a farmer who's buying these seeds, there is no way to see a seed and know it's correct or not. Like, maybe if we pick up something which is a counterfeit product in the market, like maybe a chocolate bar of chocolate or ghee or milk, you can have an inkling when you taste it or whatever that it is fake or not.
Unless the yield comes out.
खत्म है. तो अगर उसने नकली प्रोडक्ट खरीदा है जो उसे पता नहीं चला, he sold it, the rains have happened, he has waited for a few weeks for the saplings to come up, he has no idea. And imagine that's a whole year of that guy's wasted.
Correct.
Whole year of that guy's wasted, and it's really.
And the way this country functions, the entire agricultural expanse of this country is there's a lot of debt involved.
Yeah.
There's a lot of debt involved, and some 30 to 40% of the farmers who are actively involved in agriculture, they're actually pledged a lot of their money and their savings.
Absolutely. And it's contract farming at the end of the day.
Absolutely, contract farming. Absolutely.
They don't have their
They don't own the land.
They hadi pe wo
land
lete hain and they pay for it. And imagine he goes, buys something, he doesn't get the yield, he's invested his money in buying something which is.
वो जमींदार के पास उसने अपना घर रखा हुआ है, उसने एक टुकड़ा ले लिया है कि okay, I will basically give you so and so. Bad seed, bad yield, no rain, screwed.
Life is gone. I mean, it's screwed. Absolutely. I don't think there's a better way to define that.
Yeah.
Position.
So just before this conversation, I and Adi actually decided that we're going to talk about supply chains not from the perspective of what a textbook would really tell you in a management school or a B school in terms of models and this and that and this how you do this and all that kind of stuff. So we decided to take it a slightly different route. I don't know, it might work out, it might not, but we'll just give it a shot.
Let's move away from the drab discussion because I think even in my MBA when I studied supply chain, it was a dead boring subject, right? I think actually after working in this field that we have been, when you start talking to folks who are participants in that supply chain, and you understanding what they're doing and where the root issues are, right? What we started to realize was that textbook supply chain management is so far away from
the reality,
the on-ground issues that you're trying to solve, right? And it emanates from everything. Bad logistics, bad weather, freaking bad internet connectivity. Oh God, I cannot tell you. Bad internet connectivity is like the biggest hindrance.
It's the bane of our existence.
The bane of our existence. And especially when you talk about systems, when you talk about software solutions. I mean, there is internet everywhere, and everything is dependent on movement of information, and movement of information is finally those frigging data packages which are dependent upon internet connectivity.
So we said, we will structure our conversation also in a very real kind of a way, and we'll try to map it to what the real need is.
Yeah.
And here, see, at least in my head, I would basically make a very expansive statement that humanity at this point in time is run by supply chains. You have to mota, if you for sustained existence, you need food, you need a house to stay, a place to stay, you need clothes to wear, you need stuff that you could call your own, and all kind of things. Well, I would like to aggregate all of it as roti, kapda, and makan. I mean, roti, kapda, makan is probably going to containerize all of supply chain, all basic needs that drive humanity, or they drive humanity's existence. And we're going to try to bridge a gap between, not bridge a gap, but try to build a bridge between these basic necessities that human beings require and supply chains which deliver it to them. And then we'll take each one of them and then we'll start talking about the nitty-gritties, vagaries, the absolute conundrums that exist within a supply chain for that particular part, and then we'll move on. And that way we would cover different kinds of supply chains, different different kinds of skullduggery that happens.
The vagaries, actually, that's the best word.
Yeah, the vagaries.
The similarities, the differences. Actually, I think in light of what has been happening, this basic necessity should also include roti kapda makan aur tel.
Correct.
But I think it's so important now. Tel is just anyways.
So
let's limit ourselves to roti kapda makan, right?
Right. So let's the most important need, food, roti, and of course there's just an aggregation of just about everything that you consume.
Basic necessities to survive.
Basic necessities to survive, right? So whether it is seed, atta, biscuits, water, tea, coffee, whatever, everything that you basically put in your bloody mouth is basically containerized into this roti thing.
Yeah.
And then and of course there is a massive supply chain which basically helps get these products manufactured and then get across to you so that you can basically put it into your mouth. And of course each one of them has its own problems. Then we can start from there.
Yeah.
Since you did bring about the topic of seeds, which is the start of everything that is going to be produced later on, we might have just in fact we have some of the guys that we work with are basically seed manufacturers.
Yes.
So we do have deep insights about what the supply chain actually looks like and all that doohiery that happens in that supply chain.
Absolutely. It's amazing. I think so starting off with that categorization that you did, right? So we have roti, kapda, which I think also for us we started categorizing in terms of anything that you still need and probably don't put into your mouth. So maybe like
clothes, shoes,
everything, right? And makan, which is obviously maybe slightly more towards
consumer durables, electricals, paint industry. A lot of these people we work with, right, which help you build a house that you really stay in. So
in context to that, I think what at the base level, while supply chain, when we talk about it, it's largely a loose construct of what it includes, right? I mean, essentially, it is understood that supply chain has everything from getting the raw material, procuring it, processing it, sending it, getting it to the consumer through whatever route and partners that you have, and at the end of the day, probably getting back what has not been consumed, reprocessing it, or kind of rejecting it, or destroying it, whatever. It's a huge context in terms of what all it covers. For our perspective, I think our engagement with the folks that we worked with has largely been across. We usually start off at the procurement, probably less involvement in the manufacturing side because, like we spoke about, internally tracking is not much of an issue because everyone is on the payrolls and you can give them the stick and you can make them do what they want.
Right.
To have visibility. Even then, there are some commonalities which run across the supply chain, which we still talk about in terms of the most basic tenets of what having a supply chain is.
That's true,
right?
That's true.
I think after working here for some time, there is something which I kind of put into context for myself to see why the issues are there, right? Okay, so today the way things happen, if you take a standard supply chain, right, and this is industry agnostic, for instance, right? Raw materials are what processing is happening. From here, let's say when we start talking about what are the players who are there in the supply chain for any organization, because it's a huge country, people will usually try to have the manufacturing set up somewhere close to where the raw materials are there. So depending upon the size of an organization, you will have multiple factories or processing plants which are set up close to the processing, the processing points of the products.
Mm.
And from there, you start the distribution. So the downstream distribution starts from there. So the first step is you containerize large volumes and like multiple tons of products which are taken from a factory, and you place them, let's say, in east, west, north, south, central,
Correct.
and a few more parts of the country. So technically, a large organization might have anywhere between, let's say, 4 to 5 warehouses to even 20 to 30 warehouses to capture the entire country. Usually, products are moving on superhighways or through trains along this route,
Right.
and the storage capacity of these places are in a few, maybe lakh tons. You have warehouses which are a few lakh square feet, right? So
And especially when you talk about the agriculture industry, the volumes are massive.
volumes are massive, and
So-
volumes are massive, and the times are short.
Time is short,
Right.
absolutely.
So they have their peaks and they have their absolute troughs. And so once the products are here, the next part is to actually go one step deeper. So every turn of this product movement takes it one step deeper into reaching out to its consumer.
Correct.
Right. So what happens is once it's at the at a depot, from here you will have probably smaller vehicles which will take these to distributors or stockists, super stockists, right? From distributors, so it might be like a 407, Tata 407, which is like smaller trucks. Otherwise, you will have 20-foot container or 40-foot
The
containers.
matadors,
Right.
all of that.
So the 40-foot containers are taking your products from your plant all the way to the different warehouses,
Correct.
depots. From there, you have the Tata 40710, which is taking to a distributor. And from distributors, you probably have like a Hathi or one of those small ones, which is taking it to every retailer. And mind you, again, we're still talking about the organized retail or organized distribution out here. In context of things today, what happens is a manufacturer knows what is happening till his product reaches the warehouse, right? His depot, that is to say, which is maybe a state depot or an east, west, north, south depot. From there, the products start going to the distributor. This is where the ratio of players start going up by a very, very high number.
Correct.
Right?
It shoots up exponentially.
So one where a
Absolutely.
depot might be supplying products to maybe 100 distributors, right? Now, once it gets to a distributor, distributors will be addressing local markets which might have, and this is not just roti, it's kapda makan also, right? From here, the products move from a distributor to a retailer, right? And this is again, I always want to say this is the organized supply chain, right?
Correct. And this by far and large will remain the basic principle on which supply chain will
across. There will be different aspects in this. For instance, that someone might be using an ambient supply chain, right?
Correct.
Someone's turnaround or churn will be much higher if you're selling, let's say, milk which has a shorter
completely
shelf life,
product
right?
dependent, right?
Right, completely product dependent. But the basic tenet of how the product
Will remain
is
the same.
moving is this, because you're trying to move from a specific manufacturing location and have deep inroads into the hinterland or across the country, basically getting to your end consumer. And that's how it happens. One distributor finally will probably serve anywhere between 20, 30 retailers to even 100, 150 retailers in highly populated, dense areas. And then those retailers will serve millions of consumers, right? And then this is the organized and non-organized. Sometimes from a distributor it might go to a wholesaler or something, or a cash and carry, right? And the number of retailers who will go to these cash and carry, pick their products up, or who will go to a wholesaler, pick their products up, get it back to the store and sell their products it is almost unaccounted, right? Because you can have a kirana store which is probably like 10 foot by 4 foot, who will be selling an assortment, specifically in an FMCG, which assortment of almost 100 products, which is what you need for your daily stuff.
Just imagine lack of within manufacturing you have visibility. Great, they have stuff there. Great, good for you. Post manufacturing there is no visibility. Now it goes to a distributor, there are 10,000 of them.
Yeah.
Then each one of these 10,000 distributors is now sending it to retailers, to a cash and carry, to a wholesaler. And depending upon what party is going to give him the most amount of money, because he's basically pledging his own stuff to basically become a distributor for that particular product.
Correct.
So he has a lot to lose. He will try to make maximum of his sale as much as he possibly can.
Absolutely.
उसके लिए he does not feel constrained or bound to follow the conventional supply chain.
He doesn't.
He will give it to whoever he wants.
But this is one amazing thing about these distributors. They are amazingly calculative, right? I mean, their sense of unit economics is so amazing. So I remember when I was in Grofers, we had our own. We started developing our own white label chain of products, right? And then I tried to go and set up our own distribution channel for the white label products. And every time I would go to a distributor, I would tell him, "ये product है, ये देखो कितना अच्छा है, इसको मैं आपको इस पे 40% margin दूँगा." So he would ask me. He said, every guy across the board, 2 questions. He would say ROI कितना है, and I was like, damn. And he said second question was advertising budget कितना है, and I was like,
oops,
damn.
double whammy.
I was stumped because obviously I knew my answers were not something that would drive home the sale, but I was really amazed at the way he was thinking, you know, and that's what I say. That you know, that's something which.
लेकिन उसके लिए तो first principles है ना यार.
हाँ.
उसके लिए तो first principle है, distributor है, उसको he needs to get in stuff from the manufacturer, sell it out. He obviously is going to, number one, be concerned about the ROI that he's going to make out of the particular product, every unit sale.
Yeah.
And that unit sell is going to depend upon how well the bloody brand is advertised and marketed in the first place. So these two for him are first principle obvious question that he will ask.
It's really amazing because the product literally decides whether it sells or not.
Correct.
To give you a very basic example of this is like an ITC will probably give its retailers single digit margins on sales, right? Whereas maybe another product might even go into double digits, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe 2 times, 3 times margins. But the issue is the effort that takes for a retailer to sell that product
is next to nothing.
Is next to nothing.
Absolutely.
Because he वो user comes and he says that मेरे को ये product चाहिए. Now the thing is, is he going to make that effort to make that guy understand when there are 4 guys standing कि नहीं ये लो ये अच्छा है? He won't. He will say ठीक है लो. वो 4 मिनट में उतना ही सेल करेगा उस प्रोडक्ट का जितना वो उस प्रोडक्ट का 8-10 मिनट में करेगा. So
हाँ, but distributor is not your employee. He's not a branding employee. Correct. He's a seller.
And distributor owns the product because distributor pays money for the product he has.
Yeah,
so
ownership has changed.
Yeah, so he has no he's not obliged to
absolutely
sell what you're selling, even if you're giving great margins. But coming back to this supply chain, right? And what I realized, I love circling back to things after diverging.
But then
it's like I bark it out there and I'm like, इसपे वापस
but this entire domain is like that. You still have to go back. लेकिन वो बोला था ना.
This discussion is also like it's like a web. Yeah. So the distributor gives it to a retailer, and sometimes retailers go to wholesalers and they pick up this stuff and they sell in these little shops. Now, what is amazing to realize is that from the time a product is manufactured till the time a retailer picks it, a consumer buys it from a retailer, depending upon the kind of product, right? The urgency of that supply chain to get it to the shelf and get it sold. So, literally speaking, buying a dahi versus a bar of chocolate, right? A certain percentage of the shelf life of the product is already over.
That's true,
right?
That's true. The amount of time the entire chain takes.
Right. I mean, to give us interesting answer, there are edible oils which have a shelf life of 5 years, right?
Yeah.
But still, if you go to a shop and you buy and you see one which is जिसमें सिर्फ 3 साल बचा हुआ, you'll be like ये 3 साल मेरे को नहीं चाहिए, मेरे को 4 साल वाला चाहिए. तुम 3 साल नहीं लगाओगे.
तो human mentality है ना.
You will not take 3 years to finish it. You will finish it in the next how many weeks or something. But anyways, so now the point is that what has been established so far is that there is a chain and there are participants and there are stakeholders who are helping a manufacturer take this physical product from the place it's manufactured to a warehouse or a depot, to a distributor, to a stockist or sub-stockist, to a retailer and to a consumer. So there are different participants. In today's context, what has happened is that because there is no aggregation of information, everything flows in that, which means that for a manufacturer to know, and this is really important for a guy because I need to know how my product is selling, which markets it's selling in, what is the churn rate, what is the acceptance rate, and these are all figures, right? Now you can do as many customer or client consumer reviews or consumer findings. You can get Nielsen to find out कि कहाँ पे क्या कितना बिक रहा है. Market research ही नहीं आ रहा है यार. So you can do as so that just shows you how averse I am to market research vis-a-vis getting real on-ground numbers because it's extrapolation of a small group of data. That's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah.
Now the point is that you are dependent upon that and you are guesstimating what happens as an extrapolated input of the data which this company has given to you. So the point is it's either that or I wait for my distributor to get details of which retailer has bought how much and
that will never happen.
What is how he's buying that product again, right? And then that kind of translates into him telling that distributor to a warehouse or to the specific warehouse which
but that will never happen.
And that to the main manufacturer who consolidates it. Now the thing is you see the absurdity of this, right? The same line in which product is moving, you're dependent upon that same guy to get the information. ये उससे लेगा, वो उससे लेगा और फिर ये मुझे बताएगा. There's time loss. And again,
उसके पास तो time नहीं है. He's not even obliged. The main thing is not obliged to give you that.
And not only is he not obliged, he knows he's not obliged and he doesn't want to give it to you. He will never tell you कौन से retailer ने खरीदा, कितना खरीदा, क्या खरीदा, कुछ नहीं.
Because he is getting margins, no?
Yeah, and that's his mainstay. That information is his power out there. Right? So he will not tell. There are companies who can strong hand their, arm twist their distributors into saying that हमारा product बिकने तो ये देना पड़ेगा, and होता है. But that is maybe top 5% of the brands in every district.
Absolutely, top 5%, absolutely.
Now, so this information is coming to you. Now, at the same time, there is, all manufacturers have realized that you have to give something over and above the margin that he gets to sell it. So, you are incentivizing that guy by virtue of giving him trade promotions or marketing budgets which are set in quarterly purchase schemes, etc., which basically help you incentivize or motivate this guy कि अगर तुमने इतना और बेचा तो मैं तुम्हें 5% 4% और margin दूंगा तो तुम मेरा product बेचो, right? So that happens. Now the point is that entire data of उसने कितना बेचा, he is dependent upon the distributor to tell him. क्या distributor बता रहा है?
This is as good as saying कि data नहीं है.
Data नहीं है. लेकिन और saying that data है और मैं ये marketing promotion दे रहा हूँ लोगों को, लेकिन उसका actual effect कितना हो रहा है? Means maybe there's that little guy with a small store who's like your brand champion, man. He's selling your stuff. But the thing is, he's so small that whenever he buys stuff and sells it, the distributor probably says that maybe like 3 weeks or 3 months or 4 months or 6 months down the line, because he's such a good seller of yours, if you're incentivizing him properly, he can buy more, sell more, have a bigger shop, right? But you don't know. And there are millions of stores like that.
Yeah.
Who all will you look at, right? So the point is, you don't know if you have visibility of the guy who's actually selling your product. Do you know if he's that specific guy? Do you have his identity or you're aware of his identity, right? So you're dependent upon someone else to tell you who that guy is. And then the final kicker is that this marketing budget or promotion that is there is disbursed in the same damn way in which you disperse your product. So आप credit distributor को देते हो, distributor credit retailer को देता है, और फिर retailer, now thing is this entire scheme from the time it starts to the time it ends, there's time has gone by, whether the veracity of that data you don't know, and whether that amount which is you have earmarked for distributing or incentivizing that guy has gone to him or not, and whether he's incentivized enough. In the meantime, maybe some other brand has come in, whittled your way in, or whatever, anything could happen. So there's it's data collection and credit disbursement is absolutely fake.
Completely guesstimate है.
Guesstimate.
Complete guesstimate. भगवान भरोसे इसको बोलते हैं ना, भगवान भरोसे हो रहा है तो भगवान भरोसे ही हो रहा है.
So what happens is that suddenly you realize that all the work that you're doing to supply chain is becoming like advertising.
Yeah.
Because आपने बहुत सारा पैसा डाल दिया है, लेकिन उसका आउटटेक क्या हुआ है थोड़ा सा पता नहीं है. किधर चलेगा नहीं मालूम है. Right? So everyone faces this, and kind of that is one place where, well, for us to say that consolidation of this data, aggregation of this data, having right visibility into this data helps you plan better, helps you produce better, helps you procure better, helps you incentivize better. basically it helps you sanitize your business to such an amazing level, right? And this is again not industry specific.
Yeah, from a systemic perspective, right? Imagine you have your functional supply chains running, and what you just described right now is the basic threat that all supply chains will follow. Whether it is roti, kapda, or makan, it doesn't matter. So everyone will follow the same pattern, the same passage of products, passage of credit, passage of information. This is the basic fundamental principle.
Yeah.
If you only parallelize the movement of data exclusive from the actual supply chain and keep it away. Okay, supply chain में जो हो रहा है, but there is a parallel backbone which is just dedicated towards movement of data.
Information collection.
Information. That's it. ये जो हो रहा है उसका information, this line that is happening is like at every point in time, every player in that chain उसका data में एक दूसरा parallel bus में collect कर रहा है और इसको मैं दे रहा है, जिसको चाहिए उसको दे रहा है, so that these guys who are manufacturing know exactly what is happening here without having to be dependent upon these guys to give that data, because someone else is doing it. Now, can it be done? Yes, maybe so.
I think in absolute startup balance is talking about disrupting the information chain.
And yes, we are disrupting the information chain supply chain.
Yes, absolutely.
Come and work with us.
But it's amazing. And the good part is that for us, it doesn't end there. Because we are also looking at credit disbursement to the right person at the right time in the right quantity, right? And you know the offtake. This is the best part, right? When you're incentivizing the right guy for being your brand champion, right? You are not only, and you know, by virtue of digitizing this entire part, you're not only getting it to him faster. I mean, you're getting it to him first of all, which is good enough, but you're getting it to him faster. Now it pisses off a lot of distributors and stuff, but well, you know, change is the only constant type stuff.
That's true. And even from our own organization perspective at O4S, right? We are doing, which well, very few of them, if anyone has done, is कम से कम first principle information breaches to plug करें. At least first principle breaches को plug करें. We haven't even started getting into the nitty-gritties of it. Like you said, warehouse management, order management, distributed management systems. No, we are not even getting into that. Not yet. We are not there yet. पहले तो we'll do first things first. Breach these gaps.
Actually, this is what I find amazing about what is happening. You know, we spend a lot of time. There's something I will circle back to. Okay, on that. There's something that, you know, there's a specific way that this entire, you know, how we are affecting this data collection, uniquely coding products for us, right?
Correct.
It's a pain to set it up, right? But the boon of doing that down the line is amazing, because damn, so many things, so many places, it's plugging so many things, right? A basic feature, or you know, one of the basic way that our entire product is working. And it's, when I say basic, it's truly basic. It's you know, we always, across supply chains, across systems, there is always a challenge when you're trying to recreate in a system what is happening in the physical world, right? That's how systems help you, right? Data collection. I'm going to end up putting pins in so many places to get back to. Okay, data collection. Data collection is, any company, when they implement an ERP, right? Everyone thinks that this is going to make my life amazing. I'll have all the data in the world, and I am going to be like killing it.
But they don't have data, do they? They just have standard operating procedures.
It is such a, you know, it's like dragging someone back all the way from the seventh heaven back to earth, screaming, shouting and kicking when they realize that they're suddenly putting more people to just do data capturing, to enter data, to physically, to emulate in the system what physically is happening on the floor, right? And what people then realize is that, and there, see, the point is, at the end of the day, the guy who's doing that data entry is a guy, right? And it is not always absolutely correct. When you start from manufacturing to warehousing to distribution, there is a guy who's sitting out there and who says, today I am booking production of this product of this quantity. He enters it and he's sitting in the data room, and there's a guy who's working out there in the manufacturing floor, and he comes back and he says, आज का production order था 10,000 बनाने थे, उसमें से 8,000 बन गए. He enters it and he goes home. That guy goes home. Then the product is taken from the manufacturing shop floor to a finished goods inventory, and it's kept out there so that some purchase order can be fulfilled with that finished goods stock.
Correct. Check कर बनाया ठीक है.
But what happens is, now similarly when this product is dispatched from here to a warehouse and loaded into a truck, there's a guy who puts the stuff into a truck and he comes back and he says that इतना माल चढ़ा दिया है. So that guy says इतना माल चढ़ा दिया है, कल 1000 बना था, 800 भेज दिया है, 200 बचा हुआ है, ठीक है. इसने जाके देखा नहीं है, उसको पता नहीं है ये सिस्टम में क्या डाल रहा है, right? And everything, and it is absolutely prone to human error, right?
Of course.
Right? From here, when the product reaches the warehouse, someone receives it, एक बंदा physically count करता है, दूसरा जाके बताता है कि इतना आ गया है, मैंने इस बिन में डाल दिया है, तो वो यहाँ पर डाल देता है. फिर से यहाँ से परचेज ऑर्डर आता है, तो फिर से बोलता है कि मैंने उठा दिया, डाल दिया. These are, so as many transactions that are happening where we are emulating a physical movement of a product in the supply chain. And mind you, this is still happening in the confines of an organization.
Yeah.
So we have not even reached when it goes outside.
Correct. अभी तो control है उनके पास.
This is not the controlled environment that is happening when this is happening. Every time a transaction happens in the system where you are emulating what is happening in the physical world is a point of failure.
And because it is a point of data entry.
It's a point of data entry where there is human dependency.
Correct.
So, and it's dependent on not having that equivalence between what is happening in the physical world and what is happening in the system world, right?
Yeah.
And that is why discrepancies creep into this system. That's why people end up reconciling their inventory. That is why they end up shutting their warehouse for 10 hours and going physically and counting कितने डब्बे पड़े हुए हैं, and then they go update it, and then they reconcile the inventory, all that stuff. And this is happening in the controlled environment. Now, what we basically do from a data perspective, right, which is amazing, is that we spend a lot of time digitizing a product, right? And I love the philosophy behind this, which is that if I'm giving this mug to you, right, I will either give it to you, then I will go and I'll say I have given a mug to you, right? Now I could have given these 2 mugs to you, but instead of 2 I might have put 1, whatever, right? But the point is digitizing the product, which means that imagine I take a picture and I say click, I have given this mug to you, right? And that's the proof of actual physical mug. Now the thing is, if I have only 1 mug, I can take a picture of only 1 mug and give it to you, right? I cannot give 2 mugs to you and take a picture of 1 mug and say. So the thing is, what digitally identifying the product is actually doing is it's giving it a digital identity by which I don't have to emulate it, right? I'm just recreating it. Without recreating it, I'm actually just kind of copying it out back into the system without having to.
In many ways, you are giving it a very human-like form.
Yeah.
Where उसका वो हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, वो नेमलेस एमलेस प्रोडक्ट को एक वजूद मिल गया है. वजूद डिजिटल आइडेंटिटी एंड only if uniqueness is maintained. Uniqueness is a characteristic which is tagged onto a product. Out of 1 million products, if you tag uniqueness to each and every particular product which has been manufactured digitally, it doesn't matter how it is manufactured, but whatever you have done, you've managed to pull it off. You've managed to pull off a unique identity which you are affixing on every bloody product.
Absolutely.
Now, the fact that you have actually managed to pull out uniqueness which means that वो बंदा, that particular product, wherever it surfaces,
Yeah.
they will know कि okay, that product with that unique identity came here.
Came here.
Which, in fact, and that's what I like to tell people, their concept of digitizing a product itself ensures traceability.
It is absolutely, and you cannot get it wrong, because this product which is in my hand is a unique product.
Yeah.
Like, I tell you, look at these two.
Correct.
No, which is my glass, which is yours.
I only for absolutely.
No, yeah, this is yours. You're drinking water, I'm drinking coffee. But that's exactly what happens in today's scenario, right?
Yeah.
Products don't have unique digital identities.
Footprint ही नहीं है.
Footprint ही नहीं है. Now the point is, the moment you give this identity to products, the consequences of figuring out what's happening to this product within the confines of my warehouse, within the confines of my plant, is amazing, because I know exactly
They
what is the
quadruple.
product.
Chances quadruple.
Exactly, and I know something has gone wrong with the product, where it has come from,
Correct.
who's given me, where have I bought the raw material for that product which has gone wrong. So that traceability is amazing. Now, while I'm not saying that this is so much more easier than ERP. Actually, it is, because I've worked on ERPs, and you know, creating transactions, capturing data is quite painful, right? So while
But what do you think? It is different from an ERP.
It is different.
Because ERPs are very specific, are very jurisdictional.
yeah,
मतलब they are, उनका काम एक ही है, they want to automate your standard operating procedures. Manufacturing procedures को लोग automate करेगा. Now
Yeah.
that requires data, like you said, data, they don't have the data, they have the SOPs.
So this is exactly what I was also starting off to, where I had put a pin before.
Correct.
Was that the entire I think the proof of the pudding of what is going on out here is that while you have hundreds of products which can do impeccable planning based on whatever planning methodologies that
Yeah.
you want, right? But what is the veracity of the data on which they are working, right? So again, a pin which I put long back, which I finally need to take off, is that Nielsen ka market research that happens is coming from speculative data, is coming from data from which you are making speculations based on extrapolating that data, right?
Yeah.
Out here I'm saying that, you know what, if you see this product here in the market, this is a product which has come from a manufacturing plant in, I don't know, let's say Khopoli, from where it went to Bhiwandi, from where it came to a warehouse here in Najafgarh in Delhi, और उसके बाद ये गया इंदिरापुरम में, और वहाँ से उसका बिका, it's sold. So when I pick up that product, I know exactly where all it has gone. Now the point is, the reason why we keep talking about defining the basic tenet of entire supply chain is to be able to get that data, which is what we are kind of making sure is absolutely real. And when you have that data, real data, the amount of information that you can take out of it is immense. And this is across supply chains. I need to plug another pin which I had put in my head, actually, what we are talking about.
Which actually makes we can actually move on to our next topic on this particular note, because now we have actually very adequately described what needs to be done or what the problems are in a supply chain across any industry.
Yeah.
This is going to happen in any industry.
This happens anywhere.
So need for traceability, need for identities is there in any industry.
So I think we started off talking about, and I think covering to some extent what agri was already when we started off.
Correct. So that is why this is how I want to build a bridge. So now that we have talked about a standard supply chain, all the natak that happens, and the need for traceability, the need for digital identity, and then I and you can proudly say, as of as we do it, us, we are awesome. Good for you, good for us. But is it really that simple? Then why have you not bloody taken over the world yet? There's a reason for it. The reason is we in supply chains, as we talked about roti, kapda, makan, each is a different product by itself.
Yeah.
Each has a different market, consumer base. Not only that, it is dependent upon winds, rains, topology, geography, whatever, everything.
4G.
And 4G, yes, 4G, internet connectivity. So all of that. Now you put all of it together, and each and every industry that we work for, agricultural industry, to the already existing problems in the supply chain that we talked about,
Yeah.
there are some additional problems that are imposed by these very specific vagaries for that particular industry.
Right.
Right, so apart from all of that we talked about कि मतलब manufacturing के बाद distributor warehouse में जाने का है, यहाँ पे कितना यहाँ से गया, कितना यहाँ पे पहुँचा, yeah, he puts a manual entry, the ERP is saying okay I manufactured so much and so and so so and so, but at each and every state change of the particular product there is a manual entry somewhere,
Yeah.
right, which basically defeats the purpose of actually traceability क्योंकि वो traceability तो है नहीं actually, it is all dependent upon भगवान दो से डेटा
एक्चुअली
वो तो है।
ट्रेसेबिलिटी सिर्फ सिस्टम में है।
वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग ट्रेसेबिलिटी
तो आप सिस्टम में देख के बोल सकते हैं यहाँ पे इतना बना है, यहाँ पे गया, वहाँ पे गया, लेकिन आपने ये प्रोडक्ट उठा लिया तो आप बोलोगे कि ये कहाँ से आया ब्रो, पता है ठीक है कुछ तो भी है, यहाँ पे बना है, इस दिन पे बना है, तो बट कहाँ जाके आया ये।
हाँ, and now you for example the seed industry, now take this and take the seed industry. अब now seed industry में January to March is the only time frame you have.
Yeah.
अब January to March में the time frame में you have to manufacture, you have to do all of this, you have to give it to your distributors, you have to give adequate time for the distributor to give it to a retailer, and you have to give adequate time for the retailer to give it to a farmer.
Yeah.
And this is different for every zone in the country.
Yeah.
कहीं को जनवरी में डालने का है, कहीं फरवरी में डालने का है, कहीं मार्च में डालने का है, because the rain gods are not going to be playing footsie with you.
They're more likely playing hooky with you.
Yeah, they're playing hooky with you. So they will come whenever they want to. So this entire supply chain with all of its crazy intricacies, that it needs to fit itself within a time frame,
Yeah.
which is dictated by no one but nature,
Yeah.
which is not in our control, and that is how do and the next topic conversation which you will contribute very heavily to it is what do these guys do then, because they are obviously making money and they're actually running the supply chain and people are getting the seats, farmers are getting the seats. ऐसा है कि नहीं हो रहा है,
Yeah.
and the country is large.
Yeah.
So they are doing something. So what is it that they are doing to actually make it happen in spite of all this?
I think so. It's not that markets. Okay, physical supply chains are still set. This is still happening, right? The idea is this is something which I always felt, right? Markets are governed by competitive prices.
Correct.
Okay. Which means that there is a ceiling to how much you can sell a product for.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
Your costs are based on your supply chains, product prices, overheads, right? And what we are trying to do is get more profitability in this. There are two ways to get more profitability. I increase my price, which means you get rented not viable as by your competition.
So which is great if you're monopoly, but then if you're not, then you're screwed.
Which is the case mostly how many monopolistic businesses are left there? No one, like in the country.
Exactly my point.
You see a monopolistic business and the next guy wants to get into it, right? Obviously. So why supply chains? It's all about optimizing costs, because increased profitability can only be attained through lowering costs.
Absolutely.
Right.
Not by increasing prices.
So I always maintain when someone says that इससे हमारा revenue कैसे बढ़ेगा, and I say that बढ़ सकता है, बढ़ेगा, but what you're really looking at is optimizing your costs by being able to have more data to plan better.
Correct.
You optimize costs and your profitability goes up. You optimize the amount of products you're placing correctly in the right places at the right time, which means you're taking less product back, which means less product is getting, let's say, spoiled in transition. You have less, your warehouse visibility of your product is right, your stock aging is getting viewed properly, your stock position is right, stock is not aging in your inventory and it's not going old and getting expired in your warehouse, because you have better visibility of your product, because each of the product has a digital identity. When you scan it and bring it in, you know it's there. When you scan it and send it out, it's gone. You have to be at a different level of incompetent to take a product all the way to a truck in a warehouse to load it and scan something else and put this inside. It is impossible, right? And that is the philosophy of how digitizing the product helps you trace it actually better. You are able to ensure that you have way better visibility in your warehouses. You have way better visibility of how your products are being placed. Which retailer has it? I think one thing that we didn't touch upon so far that we've been talking about is, while within the organization you can still give the stick and make people work, which is the same as which is the case in terms of, or which is the case for any other product which any organization is working. When you look at trying to collect data from partners, which is the biggest stick in the mud, right? You have to give them the carrot, right? So it's always a carrot and stick. Employees get the stick, and partners get the carrot.
Correct.
Right? So the point is, when we spoke about trade promotions, etc. previously, like the idea is that obviously you run trade promotions on the same codes, and you get these guys on, let's say, an app, and then you tell them whenever you buy a product, you scan it. The moment the season is over, your promotional or marketing promotion budget, or the amount which was the credit which was initially coming to him from the distributor, to whom it was coming from the manufacturer, gets credited directly to your account, right? So it's efficient, it is fast, it is believable, and well, that's the carrot you're giving to collect your information from him. But the best part is, you are using your trade promotions more effectively to get you data.
Absolutely.
Right? So, you're getting more bang for your buck.
You're going right at the source, right?
Yeah, and you're getting more bang for your buck.
Absolutely.
And you're not dependent on anyone, because वो पैसा तो spend करना ही था. अब आपको information भी मिल रही है कि किसके पास कितना माल है, कौन कितना खरीद रहा है, कौन कितने, who's rebuying stuff at a better rate, all that stuff. So, I mean, we for instance can give you heat maps of what product is selling in what area at what site, right? Which are the areas where your product is not selling enough, maybe in a district, maybe in a state, right? But circling back to agri, right? The thing with agri is that the turnaround is really hectic. Like from a time a manufacturer or a distributor, not a distributor, a depot of a manufacturer sells the products down to a dealer, right? The dealer receives it. The products are on the shelf, right? The products are on the shelf. The sales guys of a manufacturer are there at that dealer store every day, asking him कितना बिका, कितना खरीदा, आगे कितना गया, कितना retailers ने खरीदा, कितना बिक रहा है, क्योंकि he needs to know visibility into how much is selling.
Almost real time.
Quasi-static, like it has to be quasi-real actually. If he doesn't and he stays for 1 week, now the point is, let's say the stuff that has been placed at the shop hasn't churned, but retailer doesn't care. Like, उसका तो सिंपल है, जो नहीं बिका वापस बेच दूंगा, दे दूंगा, उसका पैसा नहीं मिलेगा, right? But for this guy, if that product is not being pulled out at the right time and being pushed up, down or up the motion or the path of the monsoons, he's missed an opportunity. He's lost opportunity.
And lost opportunity, if the product is sold, it has to come back to him.
It has to come back.
Yes, and then that product is lost. It's gone.
Don't forget, एक और चीज है, reverse supply chain का भी cost रहता है.
हाँ, वो तो है ही है. And then this product is lost, because then once, if it's a bad seed, it's a bad seed. You can't keep it for too long.
You can't.
So after a season, it's gone. It's gone.
And most of the companies who are doing seed production, well, because the costs involved are high, there are costs associated with re-storage of these seeds. So they get seeds back, they're debulked into larger packets, and then they're stored. So there's an inventory carrying cost which is associated with it.
There's refrigeration cost, all that
everything.
kind of stuff, right?
So what we are saying is, we are able to, by virtue of digitizing the product, we are able to get visibility into what's being sold to the next step in the supply chain, right? And every guy who's buying it or who's selling it ahead is just all he has to do is scan the product because that gives him value. You know, we've been talking about all these Kirana apps, you know,
Right.
which have had not really good performance in the market, and a lot of people have been writing about it. Simply, see, the point is that you go to a small Kirana store, right, which is being run by a guy. He knows what's in a store. I mean, he doesn't need a POS or an app to do it, right? And that's the reason why they don't adopt
हाँ
it.
ये छोटू एक कॉर्नर में पड़ा है, इसका एक पैकेट पड़ा है,
सब पता है, उसे पता है कौन से बिस्किट के कितने पैकेट कब खरीदे थे, कौन से कोने में कहाँ पे पड़े हैं। उसे पता है, वो लोग थम्स अप तो he'll see thumbs up नहीं है, he'll से छोटू नीचे जा, वहाँ पे thumbs up का 2 पड़ा हुआ है, he'll say that 1 लीटर का है, 250 मिलीलीटर का, 300 ml का नहीं है, he will know. So he doesn't need a system because he's too small to need a system. And for him, he'd rather service the retailer or the customer who's standing rather than start entering क्या हो रहा है, नहीं करेगा वो, इसलिए वो fail होता है. The reason why adoption of something like what we're doing is high or is there is for the simple fact that transacting or at least scanning the products in is giving him a monetary benefit out of it. And that is translating for better data for me, for the manufacturer. So
Correct.
that's the carrot.
The carrot and the stick are actually merged now.
Correct. And now you take all the data which is coming from.
And the stick is a digital stick.
Yeah, it's a digital stick. It's a digital carrot also. It's a carrot. It's a UPI carrot also sometimes.
Yes. Correct. So
that is exactly how, you know, it becomes really the efficiency of product movement in the small, you know, the efficiency of tracking data of the product that is on your shelves, that is coming back, that is being moved, is the gold mine which is helping you actually optimize your costs.
that's true.
And that is where the profitability. So to say that was it still being done? Yes, all this was still happening. But how good were your insights into real-time data as it was happening? Okay, iffy. And what digitization is helping you do is get better visibility into your product movement and hence be more profitable by virtue of reducing your costs or optimizing your costs or
Correct.
your losses.
Correct.
Right? That's
So much so that if there is one town, say Sangli in Maharashtra, where you have 10,000 bags of cereal, which is supposed to be given out to farmers in Sangli. In the month of February, जहाँ पे रेंज तुम्हारा आने वाला है मार्च में, तो तुम फरवरी में जाके उसको स्टॉक कर दिया. Then as and when product is being sold, then there's this platform that is in real time capturing data that is being sold and what is remaining with you. So you know at any point in time इतना तुम्हारे पास पड़ा है, इतना बिक गया है. मार्च आ गया, out of 500 ESP he's managed to sell only 350.
Yeah.
अभी ये 150 पड़ा हुआ है. अब जाके तुमको the same system is applicable in मध्य प्रदेश also.
Yeah.
तो वहाँ पे भिलाई में कुछ तो हो रहा है, तो भिलाई में भी वो सेम बेच रहा है. उसने 500 लिया था लेकिन उसको डिमांड आया 700 का. 500 तो बेच दिया, तो बोलता है बॉस मेरे को अभी तुम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग से दो या तो कहीं से दो. So now because this guy has visibility of this and this at the stroke of a button, he knows के बॉस सांगली वाला भिलाई को बेच.
रिप्लेसमेंट यहाँ से वहाँ डाल
दे. माइंड यहाँ से यहाँ, मतलब यहाँ से पंजाब से तरफ बताने को बहुत टाइम लगेगा. सांगली से भिलाई आएगा 2 दिन लगेगा, फटाफट मिल जाएगा. 150 चाहिए ना, 150 लेके जाएगा.
Absolutely.
And so that horizontal, in fact, that horizontal movement, though in certain cases, and especially like in agri, is so much more important.
Yeah, reaction time is really small. So
yeah, next to nothing, right? Just a couple of days, probably a week or so.
It's days. It's in days. Because what you have to also realize is सांगली में पहले वो प्लेसमेंट कर देगा, भिलाई में प्लेसमेंट बाद में होगा.
करेक्ट बाद में होगा.
भिलाई में प्लेसमेंट भी बाद में होगा. तो अगर वो efficiently ये देख सकता है कि भिलाई में प्लेसमेंट कहाँ से कितना करना है, so I'm minimizing my losses, I'm minimizing my logistics costs, I'm minimizing my return logistics costs, I'm minimizing so much stuff, right?
So much I'm saving.
Yeah.
So much I'm saving.
But you see, the point is that there will be a lot of solutions there for doing this planning, right? But the point is, how are you mining the data for which you're getting it? For me, is the crux, because
लेकिन वो solution है कहाँ?
प्लानिंग करने में प्रॉब्लम नहीं है यार, आप प्लानिंग का लॉजिक बना सकते हो. द इशू इज दैट आप कौन सा डेटा यूज कर रहे हो. इसलिए अगर आपका डेटा गलत है ना, तो आपका प्लानिंग इज स्क्रूड. So the base is, because we from the start of this discussion we've been talking about what is the base that we're talking about managing or making any supply chain more efficient, right? There are hundreds of planning tools out there. There are hundreds of tools which will give you like long-term planning, sales and operation planning.
Base is ready
planning.
availability of correct, verified, authentic data.
Exactly. So that is as the way says that we are democratizing the data across platforms.
Which is very true actually.
It's true.
This is very true.
It is true. So yeah, I think in a very large nutshell, those are some of the specific nuances of agri. But similarly, how much time do we have?
I don't know.
Is I think probably 10 to 15 more minutes. We'll pick it up in 10 to 15 more minutes.
So we
We'll take one.
we will look at something else in the next
So,
session.
very interesting thing that we which happens because when we talk about supply chains, right? When you moving on to Makaan now, let's skipping Kapda for a bit and moving on to Makaan first. There's something very specific in Makaan. So when we talking about Makaan, let's say electrical goods, paints, for instance, right? We work with refrigerant gases, right? Now, it's very interesting because the underlying theme of the supply chain is exactly the same for all of them. But out here there's a small twist which is added, right? Sales of products. So I'll ask you, right? जब घर में फ्यूज उड़ता है तो who do you call?
Electrician.
You don't go हार्डवेयर दुकान पे जाके बोलता नहीं कि मुझे एंकर का ही चाहिए. You don't.
पेंटर भी पेंट करने का तो तुम खुद नहीं करता ना.
नहीं करता. You call a painter. वो आता है लेके बड़ा सा पैंटॉप का बुक लेके आता है, बोलता है क्या चूज करो. You say that ये लाइलैक शेड मस्त है, मेरे को मांगता है ये. But you will not say ये ड्यूलक्स का है या ये एशियन पेंट्स का है, मेरे को ये नहीं, मेरे को वो पेंट मांगता है. वो बोलेगा सर नो ना, सबका सामान एक जैसा है. वो चैंपियन है उस ब्रांड का जिसका वो माल बेच रहा है. वो पेंटर वो
कंज्यूमर का माल.
वो हाँ वो that guy is your brand ambassador. So
it is actually very important to understand कि मतलब the paint industry, for example, the consumer is not the guy who is getting his walls painted.
Yeah.
He is, of course, he's ultimate consumer.
He's spending, but
हाँ.
the decision maker
is the painter.
The influencer actually.
The influencer
is the painter.
And to the paint company, that's all that matters.
Yeah. So electricians, painters, plumbers, technicians, mechanics. यानी Makaan is a different level, right? So the out there, your products are being sold by this guy. So the guy you want to catch hold of is this guy. He's the guy for who you want to incentivize, and he's the guy who you want to incentivize fast. So just as we are engaging with maybe a retailer in FMCG, out here you're engaging with the painter, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And these guys are the masters, man. So that's the twist when you come to these industries.
The consumer changes an avatar now.
Yeah. The influencer changes.
The influencer
changes avatar.
Correct. So all your branding promotion needs to be targeted towards this particular painter.
Correct.
And I mean, you could spend your branding and advertising budget on the end consumer as well.
Yeah.
But
I think वो ATL से निकल जाता है.
हाँ, correct.
These guys are specific. You need to catch hold of him. You need to engage him, and the whole idea is digitizing the product again, data collection again. Who's selling how much? Who needs to be incentivized? How good are your incentivization program? How quickly he can realize what has been promised to him if he's selling that much amount, right? Because painters can be a bunch of large organized
groups, yes,
groups, or
absolutely.
it can be a one or two single painters who are taking contracts and doing stuff.
They are daily wage workers. Many of them are daily wage workers.
Yes.
For them, incentives, monetary incentives, and real-time or immediate disbursement of incentives that you have been promised means way more over going to Nerolac versus Dulux. उसको फर्क नहीं पड़ता. अगर Dulux उसको Dulux has promised 500 rupees to you, if you take 10 dabbas of my Dulux paint and then 500 is there in my account at the end of the evening, there is no
Equivalent for it.
There's no equivalent for it.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. I will definitely do this only,
Because historically or traditionally, what happens is this guy goes to a retailer, he buys the product, then he kind of keeps a tab with the retailer, and then
Correct.
at the end of a certain period, he goes to the retailer to collect his amount, all that stuff. It is not that it is inefficient, but imagine that. So there's a very interesting use case which I keep going back to and thinking that as a product, one of the most important things of new product markets and go-to markets is being able to communicate to the guys who are selling that there is a new product, right? आप ये बेचो, right? How effectively can you do that? Usually what happens, like I said, information dissemination also in today's scenario happens the same way the supply chain of the product is happening.
Correct.
Marketing department will say नया product है, इसका brochure बनाया है, इसको हमें रिटेलर या इसे मुझे टेक्नीशियन के पास या मुझे मैकेनिक के पास ले जाना है, ठीक है? आप क्या करोगे? उसको चिपकाओगे डब्बे के साथ या प्रोडक्ट के डब्बे के अंदर डालोगे, या आप बोलोगे जैसे जैसे डब्बा जा रहा है उसके साथ ब्रोशर्स डाल दो, राइट? देन इट विल गो देयर, राइट? फ्रॉम देयर इट विल गो टू द डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर. फ्रॉम द डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर you might have let's say contracted sales guys. So you have your area sales manager who will have a team who is connected with 4 or 5 distributors. He will go to them, tell them कि अच्छा ये है, ये नया चीज़ है, ये नया चीज़ है, ये देखना है, उसको देना है, उसको एक दिन ट्रेन करेगा, 2 दिन ट्रेन बोलेगा क्या करना है, क्या बोलना है, इसको अभी खरीदोगे तो इतना मार्जिन मिलेगा, नहीं खरीदोगे तो इतना मार्जिन मिलेगा. फिर वो जाता है रिटेलर के पास, रिटेलर को बताता है या टेक्नीशियन को बताता है, उसके लिए उसको पता. फॉर नाउ इमेजिन managing retailer engagement for a sales guy of a company is still okay because वो retailer उधर ही रहेगा. You have to catch hold of a क्या कहते हैं painter. किधर भी हो सकता है.
Absolutely.
अब you will call 10 painters, वो 10 में से 4 आएंगे जगह पे, या
उनको काम है, they are daily wage workers. Why would they come?
So imagine how tough information dissemination is.
Correct.
Now digitizing the product means it is at the end of the day working on like free apps which are there on Android. You just download an app,
Right.
you scan, you get points, and you are able to redeem them. Similarly, that same platform now can be used for disseminating information to that guy.
Correct.
Notification भेजो, app में brochures डालो. All this is there. Now,
Actually, the beauty of it is bi-directional.
Yeah, exactly.
Not only are you collecting that information, you are also passing down information and incentives and money at the same time.
Absolutely.
सब कुछ एक ही प्लेटफॉर्म में हो रहा है. So which actually makes it a way more efficient way to deal with specifically this kind of industry. Correct. Because this kind of industry, you have changed the avatar of the consumer itself.
Yes.
Influencer ही change कर दिया तुमने. So
now let's say I think let's hit upon one small one for Kapda, which is I think while it is in itself such a complicated supply chain, because interestingly specifically when you go to apparels and shoes and stuff, right? It is for every product, and this is the tricky part, right? When I'm selling a milk, it might have 2 variants, maybe a slim something and a half white milk. Variant एक बात है, वो हर variant के यानी there is a shoe size 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and there's यानी वो 4 बच्चों का पेयर, लेडीज का पेयर, जेंट्स का पेयर, वो एक शू स्टाइल के एक कलर में उसके साइज वाइज इतने सारे वो हो जाते हैं.
And this style will remain for a year.
For a year.
Next collection will come.
Next collection will come.
These prices will go down. They will go in a warehouse. They will go in a 50% half price store.
Correct. Now the point is that you cannot tell a retailer कि ठीक है ये बचा हुआ है इसको 50% में बेच दे, because retailer will say 2 things, right? He said मैंने तो खरीद लिया है अभी.
Exactly. वो क्यों बचेगा?
हाँ. So how do you do it? So you have to kind of raise the reverse credit note or something like that for him to make incentivize him to sell it off so that it doesn't come back to him.
So what happens, for example, say Adidas is the company, and every year they have a new collection.
Yeah.
Right? This particular year they come with a collection for sneakers, and so they come up with some shit, and that they have distributed it to all the retailers, all the franchise outlets and everything like that, right? Now they know they have to make a sale in that particular year. Once that year goes by, some retailer basically says, I have been able to make only 60% of the sale. I have already paid for this product, obviously. So I have lost all this kind of money because now the new collection is going to come in January. I am in December. And the new collection, for whatever reason, advertisers priced it almost at the same range as the previous collection. And so now it is almost the same price. It is a better looking and a latest shoe that has come out. Why would anyone buy this? तो मतलब ये तो 40% तो मतलब वो ना इधर का ना उधर का रहा. So then is there a solution out of this, or this is it is an expected doomsday scenario for these bloody retailers?
I think different companies work on it different ways. Probably companies who are Indian in India kind of adopt to this better than Adidas, because frankly speaking, Adidas sells terrible shoes in India. Their assortment is so bad, and I don't think they really get new shoes or new ranges of shoes designs that often to India. Anyway, that's a different lament. That's a different lament. But see, what happens is for retailers, right? At the end of it, now this is a very interesting thing that you asked. Now, going back to how there are retailers who are the influencers in FMCG, let's say, or agri, for instance, and there are technicians. Depending upon the different models in which these shoes are being sold, right? What we've been working with guys, for instance, that they have started focusing a lot on that little chotu who gets the shoe out for you from the warehouse or from the little ceiling के ऊपर जहाँ पे जूता रखा रहता है.
Oh,
ठीक है. So not only is the retailer being incentivized to sell your product, you are incentivizing the chotu also and telling him that अगर तूने let's say कोई भी ब्रांड का जूता बेचा तो हर ब्रांड के जूते के लिए तेरे को 4 रुपए और मिलेंगे. Now obviously what happens is that these incentivization plans are also, see, a manufacturer will never leave a retailer in a lurch, because firstly that retailer has already bought his products.
That's my point.
So he's not going to take it back, and shoes are not a sale or return thing.
Correct.
So they are also usually a higher shelf life product in terms of obviously the season, but I mean it doesn't go bad, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So even
the fashion industry is fickle.
It is, fashion industry is fickle. But the point is, if these guys have, and any retailer who's been in the industry knows that there's a specific season, so their ordering cycle is made like that, right? So they know when to order. So that is, I mean, that is maybe outside the purview of what we are doing, but it is a set standard of procurement and delivery that happens.
Oh, so they will procure only what they are likely to be able to sell.
And that is where what interestingly happens is that when these products are delivered, right, their packaging is also happening in such a way that it's never a single design, a single color, a single variant, a single size. It is always an assortment of products which goes inside, right? So which means it sells across all foot size. So you might have like 2442 is a packaging kind of construct where it will be like 2 shoes of size 5, 4 of 6, 4 of 7 and 2 of 8 as like. So packaging constraints are usually like that. Similarly, I think in apparels also they have like a small, medium, large, extra large.
Correct.
So they have a different packaging constraint. But in terms of shoes, what happens specifically is that what we started seeing is that they have started incentivizing the chotus, and as a season is coming to an end, right, what the manufacturer also wants to do that whoever has those products are get liquidated faster, because if they don't, it's a loss for retailers, and a loss for retailers means it's a, he will not come back to buy a product.
Correct.
So this has to be planned enough to say that okay, currently what we can do is you say that okay, if these are the shoes which are from this season which are still there are promotions which are run on it, and they tell that okay, I will incentivize you more for selling these. Now interestingly for retailers it is buying, on which the incentivization happens, but for the chotu it's on selling, which means that if he's picked up that product physically and taken it to a customer and he closes it, he's able to scan it, get the points for it and get money for it. So now I'm telling that guy कि अगर तुम्हारे पास कोई आ रहा है, मेरा ये जो जूता बचा है हर जूते के पैर में तुम्हें 10 रुपए और मिलेगा. So choose my product and sell it because you are getting more money besides.
पैसा
what you
मिलता है,
are
वो उसको दे देगा.
Right.
Right. That's maybe these factory outlets or off-season sales stores that you see, right? Every massive apparel company, shoe company, suitcase company, Samsung, सबका factory outlets रहता है.
Correct.
Maybe that is a separate parallel ecosystem that exists for out-of-season stock. के मतलब यार, you can't make the full price.
Yeah.
At least make something.
Make something. Minimizing losses. basically.
Minimizing losses. Cut your losses, then get out.
Get out.
क्योंकि ये तुम्हारे स्टोर से बिकना नहीं है, ये 50% ऑफ में बिकने वाला है. So cut your losses, give it to this guy. He will make a sale. You get your money, whatever money that he's always buying it from you.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the rationale for this kind of a model of having these kind of
In fact,
stores.
one very key advantage, or one of the use cases that we've encountered a lot with products like these is, especially apparel, footwear are they're very brand conscious or brand driven, right? So there's a lot of focus on the brand value, and brand value is what these products invest in a lot,
Correct.
right? I think what happens is that out here there's another use case which is of counterfeiting, right? And which is where what organizations like to do is that giving that digital identity to the product helps them ensure that the from a branding perspective, authenticity is something that can be identified, and not only can it be identified by a manufacturer, by a consumer who's buying it, but the way these systems work is that it kind of feeds back into the information cycle to say that there's a guy who's bought a product which might not be fake. In fact, this happens with us in certain high engagement FMCG products also that we're working, and where the win comes is from being able to identify or being able to react quickly, which means the moment you have an update saying that someone scanned a product which is a possible fake, right? You call that guy immediately and say, "Aapne kahan se kharida?" And then you go to the retailer and say, "You're selling fakes. Where did you buy it from?" So again, the idea is then what you're doing is backtracking supply chain of counterfeits to get to the source rather than solving the point problem of having one fake shoe, but finding out where all these fake shoes or fake whatever products are coming from. So, like you said initially, right? The use cases for different industries are so varied, and everyone kind of is able to capitalize on a different scenario or how you're able to. Is that digital identity of the product which is helping you gather that data, which is priceless.
That's true.
Which is
Absolutely. And that's why I keep harping on this particular fact, right? That transactionally, while our platform is digitizing and storing state changes of every product that is moving across the chain, and we maintain this massive hoard of information, I still hold on to this very dearly. I will still hold on to it. Is that our IP is probably not the platform. It's data.
Absolutely.
It's the platform. People can build this data. That's fine. The way we collect this data and the way we are actually compartmentalizing it and very clearly demarcating every state change for Nestle across the entire supply chain, ownership, attribution, movement of information, movement of credit, movement of money, everything has been stored and tracked with every single transaction, and that too to a particular bloody scale.
Yeah.
Now that to me is the goal.
Yeah, the absolute gold mine of data when it comes to knowing what are the consumption patterns, what are the topographical consumption patterns, who's buying it, where are they being bought, what quantity is the same guy buying the same product, and it is amazing. Like that level of data means you can plan or you can massage the data.
To me, it is planning and supply chain nirvana.
Yeah.
I mean, to effectively use this gold mine is supply chain nirvana. And of course, we have a long journey ahead of us. And hopefully, we will make these guys understand that while transactionally we are offering this product and platform to you, we are actually doing something far more valuable that you can possibly conceive at this point in
Yeah.
time. And when you do, we're going to be there.
Yes. I think from a supply chain traceability still kind of nascent in India.
Very nascent.
Because it's it's still a good to have, and it's not a need to have, that's the direction it is going to move over the next at least half a decade, right? It is something which everyone will want insights into. It all emanates from a single fact that I believe that supply chains or having more information or data and insights into your supply chain will help you optimize and reduce losses. This is the only way you can be more profitable.
Absolutely.
More
Absolutely.
profitable. And when you have to think about it, right? When you have better visibility of consumption patterns, you are able to plan your manufacturing better, use your capital expenditure to purchase more smartly.
Correct.
Right? Be able to churn your operational expenses into revenue way faster, right? So everything starts from good data. I think it was a good summarization of the roti kapda makan. Actually, interestingly, I think this whole way of looking into it and seeing the similarities and vagaries and the differences was a pretty smart. I think it was quite
Different.
quirky.
No?
Yeah, it was good.
Quirky. At least it gives a nice story for us to portray in front of people. Hopefully, watch this and enjoy it. All right.
Good scene. Back to work. My coffee is over. So.
And my time is. Okay then. Bye bye.
Alright guys. See you.